I want to tell you a story now that incorporates two keys together, and they are that the experts are often wrong and don't let reality stand in your way. I was out in the middle of the woods making candles, and the tourists found me, and they were so excited for something of quality for their kids to do that what I did was I put up a little corner where the kids could actually dip their own candles. And we did so well in that little corner that I did that when it was over, I came up with this idea of possibly doing an entire village out in the woods. We had a 20% unemployment rate in our county, and there was no real market for a place where the people who did quality crafts, pottery, woodworking, etc., where they could sell their work without having to get in a car and drive hundreds of miles and go to a craft fair. And so I thought if we did this village, we would employ people, we would create a market for the crafters, and we would possibly help the tourists economy as well. So I sketched up some buildings and talked to some of my friends and said, what if we do this? Now, none of us had any experience in building villages. We were teachers and nurses and community volunteers and a candle maker. But nobody said no. Everybody thought it was a great idea. We were all social activists. We were not country club. We were Peace Corps, Literacy Council, etc. So this is what we did. We bought 67 acres of wilderness. It had no infrastructure. There was no road, no well, no septic. We had to put all of that in. We had to build 8 cottages and a restaurant. We had to find 60 people to employ and train to work in the shops. We had to find 200 crafters that did high quality work and create an inventory system for those goods, and then display them in the shops as well. Now, everybody said we were nuts. We were the crazy women out on the hill. But here's the thing. We did all of that, from the building of the infrastructure, the buildings, the crafts, everything. From the day we broke ground to the day we opened was 5 weeks and 5 days. We incorporated as founding mothers, and what this business magazine said was what the founding mothers accomplished within their time frame would blow the hard hat off of any general contractor. I'd also like to point out that when we started, we had 1 carpenter, 2 carpenter helpers, the 12 women, and our families. We did so much of the work ourselves. And about 3 weeks before we were ready to open, we knew we weren't going to get it all done. We put out the call for carpenters, and I think every hippie carpenter from the Smoky Hills came out to help us. And what I talk about in my classes is why were the women able to do this? And first of all, I also want to say, we had projected to the bank we'd have 20,000 visitors. We had 100,000 people show up. It was amazing. It was just amazing. So why were the women able to do this when we didn't know anything? And actually, that was part of the reason we succeeded, because we didn't know anything. That meant that we didn't have preconceived ideas on how to do things, and instead, we created ways of doing it. I remember when I went to the carpenter with a sketch of my first building, and I said, I need 8 of these and a restaurant, and this is what we're going to do. And he said, are you going to open next year? And I said, no, we're going to open in May. And this was already April. And he started to laugh, and I laughed with him. And then I said, okay, now help me figure out how to get it done. And we did that. One of the stories I tell is that when I was in high school, I wanted to take the shop, but I wasn't allowed to because I was a girl. Well, thank heavens, because if I had built my little nightstand in shop over the course of a semester, I would have known you can't build a village in 5 weeks and 5 days. But this way I didn't know any better. And so we figured out how to do it, and we did it. All the experts said, you can't build it in that length of time. Remember, experts built the Titanic and amateurs built the Ark. I want to share with you one of my favorite posters, and I do give a copy of this to everybody who comes into my class. It's called It Was Just an Idea, and it shows a light bulb, bright light, and it says, I have an idea. And in the next square, it's a little bit dimmer, and it says, well, let me play devil's advocate. And the next square says, well, we tried that once. And it goes through all of these things that the naysayers will say to you. And at the end, the bulb is completely out. And it says, oh, well, it was just an idea. Turning an idea off is much easier than keeping it lit. And so I want to say to you, when you come up with an idea for a business, be very careful who you talk to, because most people will tell you why you can't do it rather than why you can. And so this poster gives you hope to go through things and whatever. Because to me, I told you the story about the village. To me, yes, it was impossible, but we had a goal, and we were sitting here, and we just said, okay, over there in the corner is the finished product, and we have to get from here to there. That's it. And so we didn't see things as obstacles. They were problems. We just had to solve the problems and how to get over them. And so that's what I urge you to do too. Make sure that you don't let the naysayers tell you why you can't. If you really believe in your idea, then you just stick with it and go. And here's another good tip for kicking butt. You never look back and whine. After the village was built, we had many reporters come from across the country. And this one person said, okay, what was the worst, most traumatic thing that happened to you while you were building the village? And I thought, and I couldn't think of anything I'd call traumatic. So one of the other women was running by, and I said, Faye, come over here for a second. What was the most traumatic thing that happened to us when we were building the village? And she couldn't think of anything. About 2 weeks after the reporter left, I went, oh no, don't you remember? 2 days before our grand opening, the health department came in and made us jackhammer up the basement floor, because the person who had dug the septic and the person who drilled the well had put them too close together. And so we had to move the entire septic line. Now that's traumatic, but we couldn't even remember it, because we never, during that 5 weeks and 5 days, sat around and said, oh my God, don't you remember when? That's all wasted energy. You just don't look back at things that they're finished, they're done, they're over with, and you go on to something that you can then handle. Because we only saw those things as problems. They weren't obstacles. They were just problems, and we had to go over, under, around, through, whatever we had to do to make it work. And that's what you need to do too when you work on your business.